Hello, everyone. This is AlchemistiD, and I am here with a member of Special Tactics, known as Lord-Ice.
Just call me Ice, please.
Do you have enough oxygen over there? So, Lord-Ice wanted to be part of the round table. I didn't quite catch him in time to
Yeah,
include
I
him
actually
in.
had a class that night, and it was actually my computer programming class, and I didn't even get your message until
Oh,
after the class.
yeah, he told me about that. But he had a bunch of you had a bunch of questions you wanted to ask in
11.
that 11. Yeah, I don't think they were gonna like pick the 11 and like all 11 of these.
Yeah,
But
usually if he ever answers my questions, he answers like one.
well, that's like you could only get one question. That's kind of like the
Still,
it's
I
kind of
ask
like the
all of the
unwritten.
11 in
I,
hopes he'll answer one.
I'm not sure if that rule is unwritten or written, but I'm sure it's a rule regarding the Ask Cryptic. Is you get like one question, so make it a good one. One question
I've
a
seen
month.
I've seen him answer like three of people's questions very rarely. I don't remember how long it's been though.
That was a probably a long time ago because things have changed a
Yeah,
lot
don't
in
even
terms of like
have an
the
engineering report
player.
anymore.
Well, that's somewhat good and somewhat bad. We'll get into that as we go through here.
And that was kind of the inspiration behind some of these questions.
Yeah,
Some
I
of
can
the
see
questions
that.
I asked were based on things we heard of in the Ask Cryptic so long ago that I wanted to bring it back up and see if it was still being considered.
Okay. So the way we're going to go about this is we're going to go about it the same way we went about the Ask Cryptic, which is going to be its own thing because that took like
Four
hours.
hours.
So that's going to be its own thing because there's no way in hell that's going to fit into a fleet ops. So we're going to go down the list of his questions one by one, talk about them. And the first one is, what's the status of the crafting revamp, and will it still cost dilithium?
Please say no to that.
Yeah,
Putting dye into
parenthetical,
crafting
please
ruined
say
it.
no to that. Putting dilithium in ruined crafting.
And it kind of did. And I use the dye shortening for dilithium because I watch Star Trek Armada 2 Fleet Ops commentaries, and they use dilithium as a resource in that game. But effectively, I love crafting. Crafting for me is one of the biggest things an MMO has to have because it allows you to be more self-sufficient.
Well,
One of the biggest gripes I have about Star Wars: The Old Republic is the crafting system in that game is totally hands-off. You sit there and let your NPC companion do it. And if you've only got one, you're going to be sitting there. But this game, you really can't even craft unless you're willing to spend
well,
30 hours.
here's the thing: is crafting in Star Trek Online is really mislabeled because it's not crafting.
It is a vendor system, and when
Yeah.
I proposed in the old forums a new crafting system, and I actually did some UI mock-ups in, of all things, Paint back when I did it, and one of the people that ended up posting that topic was like, crafting isn't crafting, it's a vendor system, and this system is still vendoring and whatnot. I'm like, it really isn't a vendor system, but when I thought about it, it really was.
It is. You put the exact change into the slot, and out of the soda can hole, it drops out like an item. But the thing is, I remember, and this is from last year. This is from last year before season 6. I remember Daniel Stahl. I don't know if it was Daniel Stahl actually. I know it was one of the devs was talking about. It might have been Bordicus actually. Bordicus was talking about like he had written a design document, or he was in the process of writing a design document regarding a revamp to crafting.
I remember that too.
So I'm not sure what the status of that is. Will it be monetized? Of course it will. But
But it doesn't. It needs to not have dilithium because dilithium has killed the crafting system in
Well,
this game. Even if it is a vendor system,
Well,
putting
technically-
dilithium in it means you're going to spend at least a day getting something that you can get better of on the exchange.
well, here's the thing, and you don't require. This is kind of like the loophole here. Is you don't require dilithium, so they can say you don't require dilithium to do this stuff because you buy it all off.
You
the
require
exchange.
unrefined materials, which require dilithium.
No, you can buy them off the exchange for energy credits. But the rub is, somebody has to buy them for dilithium first.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of something where, for example, let's go to like the Federation EV uniforms. the Federation EVA suits, which
The
everybody
things that we should have
demanded.
had since day one now cost 700 Zen. Yeah.
Maybe not day one, but the things we should have had from when we got environmental suits into the game, from when that functionality was added, especially when it was added to be widely used in places like Nukara. You know, and you
Yeah,
have all
when
these NPCs.
they did Nukara, they should have given us the Starfleet EV suits. I can kind of understand why it's an alien EV suit that we get in Boldly They Rode, because it is an alien EV suit. It's a Jem'Hadar EV suit.
It's actually a
I can kinda
Cardassian
understand
EV
that.
suit. There's the Cardassian like galore symbol on it. It's a Cardassian suit.
They might have stolen it from the Cardassians. That, or they might have given it to the Cardassians. No, wait, no, that doesn't
No.
work. They were using it before the Dominion War.
So, but the thing is, you can buy it for 700 Zen, but their justification for putting it so high is that you could buy it off the exchange. But if you're buying it off the exchange, it costs millions. Because of how expensive, and you're not going to use it very often. It costs millions, and if you want like a team, well, you got to either pay like if you want your team to use them, especially in Nukara, not on Nukara, but on Morihan, where you have to carry around like 5 of these for like the Tier 4 and Tier 5 Romulan rep missions. It's going to cost you millions.
Yet.
Yeah, it's going to cost you millions and millions, or it's going to cost you thousands of Zen.
It's
And
yes.
Yeah. It's but it's the same thing with the crafting. They say you can buy it from the exchange, but even if you're buying it from the exchange, that still means that somebody at some point had to buy it with dilithium, and the value of those on the exchange is inflated because of that. So you can buy them off the exchange, but not very much. Now, with the uncommon ones, not the uncommon, but with like the common unreplicatable materials, it's manageable because those cost like what? 10?
100.
100?
No, 10 or 100, I think.
Yeah, I think it might be 100. But
But
even
I
at
know
100,
the uncommons cost 1,000.
Yeah, the uncommons cost 1,000, and that's the problem right there, because that is prohibitively expensive, especially with all the
According to
dilithium
my
sinks
calculations,
and the
it
fleet
takes
system.
a week to craft an Aegis set.
Yes.
A week's worth of dilithium refining for an Aegis set. And Aegis isn't even really worth it, because they've tried to make the STF sets so hugely better, and I still don't like them.
They nuked the Aegis sets. They really crazy nerfed the Aegis set. I used to use it.
I still do on my KDF tactical officer.
But now I use
He's flying a
Mako.
Burrell retrofit.
But now I use Mako and Fleet Shields.
Yeah, I actually have an advanced fleet shield that I bought off of our exchange on my science officer.
Yeah.
It works pretty well. I have to give it that.
It's pretty decent, although I'm kind of like, I'm working on, well, not only am I working on buying Zen right now that it is low, because you know something's going to happen that's going to drive it back up.
It's been going back up the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's been slowly going back up, but not really. It's been kind of like hovering. It's been hovering around that same area for a long time, like the same like 20-odd Zen range. It's been hovering there. So I'm not too worried about it like immediately, but I am like preparing for the future for when it goes back up, because I will be able to, not only will I have enough to get the TNG pack whenever the hell they decide to release it, and get the scants, for God's sake, but I'll also be able to cash in like the extra stuff for crazy amounts of dilithium once that exchange eventually skyrockets back up. So that's why I'm kind of like preparing. That's probably why I've slowed down on the fleet projects and stuff, because I'm trying to get everything ready for the future, because the requirements for future projects are gonna get insane.
I already know.
Yeah.
Someone took a screenshot of the Tier 4 requirements when they started doing the Tier 4 Starbase upgrade, and I sent that to Sarncast, and it kind of made him poop himself a little bit,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, that'll make your underwear moist when you see those requirements and you realize the amount of grinding they want you to do. The fact that it's not going to scale at all, which it should. It should scale depending on the size of your fleet, and the reason they don't make it scale is because it's they would consider that's highly exploitable. But what in this game isn't already? So
yeah, I mean, they took away the console dailies, but they ended up making it better, because now you only have to do one. You can do it every half an hour, and you get fleet marks and dilithium.
Yeah,
so it is actually a little faster.
Better and worse.
Plus, if you do the replayable mission that I do in the Foundry, you can also get loot, which translates into EC. I do a mission called Battleship Royal Rumble by Juggernaut 42. Shameless plug, if you're a tank, it's the perfect test, because you literally, at the end of the mission, you face every NPC battleship in the game at the same time. And I did it on Elite the other day, and I survived without a single death.
I use Cardassian Shipyard, and just like a no frills daily mission to just get it out of the way. I play Foundry missions. You know, I use the console missions, and I play Foundry missions, but I use those console missions because A, I was in a fleet that desperately needed those resources, and B, just to get the daily out of the way, so I could have dilithium.
It's not even a daily anymore.
It's not even a daily, but just when it was, I would just do those consoles to get the daily out of the way so I could use the dilithium to do stuff. You know, so I really hated the fact that they took that out, because it was fine the way it was. Like, people, they were angry at people exploiting it, but all they did was make it more exploitable.
Kinda. Because now it also gives fleet marks.
Yeah.
Which is good for us smaller fleets.
Which I've been dumping into, like, the Starbase project.
I've been dumping that right now into the Transwarp Conduit.
Yeah.
A couple more missions of that, and that's on its way with everything except dilithium. And once we get the Starbase and the Tier 2 everything, I'm going to work on the Embassy. Because I really want to get the Embassy up and try out the Embassy kits, but I keep hearing rants on the forum saying that they're basically shit.
Yeah, I think Andrew says that the science kit is basically useless in, like, the round table. Like, they, like, instead,
try
out
out
of every...
the engineering kit, because it's got Turret Fab 4, but I heard that Turret Fab 4 is Turret Fab 3.
Basically. But the thing is, like, for example, like for all the science kits, the one they chose was, like, the Xenobiologist kit to add an ability on.
They should have given it the Medic kit and then given it Tachyon Harmonic as the extra power, because that was the replacement power on the Borg Medical Analyzer kit that you can no longer get.
You know, I hate...
Armec doesn't drop that anymore.
It should have been something unique. It should, like, okay, what it should have been, okay? For example, like Rally Cry. All right, like, speaking as a tactical officer, like, the only healing ability we have is Rally Cry, which, even if you're using the DOF, that's supposed to revive people within, like, 15 feet if they're unconscious. That's like a 50% chance to do that. It doesn't. You know, even with that, Rally Cry is pretty much fucking useless. So, like... What I really wanted to see out of, like, the super duper embassy kits was, like, some kind of battlefield triage ability.
Which would have made a little bit of sense.
Yeah, like some kind of, like, battlefield, just like some kind of, like, medical tricorder 1, you know?
That's actually a good idea. They should have made those kits maybe a little bit cross-class.
Like,
and while they're at it, they could have added a variety of kits.
You know, like, make a science kit that, you know, if you don't want to put medic in there, fine. Make a science kit that isn't healing. Like, make a science kit that makes not healing actually good to have. Like, an actually beneficial... Because every science player has healing, because they all get shoehorned as the healer. Because no one else can do it.
I used to run Analyst and the one with the geological one. Mm-hmm. I used to run those because it had all the lockdowns and whatnot, but I just ended up going healer because I kind of wanted to tank. And really, if you're a science officer and you're not a healer, they're asking you, why are you not healing us? And I'm like, I'm not a healer. Why aren't you a healer? Again, I don't want to be a healer. I'm not the healer kind of person.
Again, battlefield triage. Like, well, again, like, back to like the tactical kit, medical tricorder 1, you know, blur the lines a little bit. And besides, it makes sense that, like, a field security officer would be trained in basic field medicine anyways. Like, for engineers, give them target optics. You know, I couldn't care less. Like, give them target optics. Give science officers, like, shield recharge. You know?
Give science officers some powers that they can actually use, because if you look at the science captain abilities, they're literally useless. When's the last time you saw a science officer use their nanoprobe infestation or their AoE placate that doesn't seem to do anything.
Never.
I tried it standing right next to a Klingon warrior, and it did nothing. Not only does it...
Well, it doesn't work on a Klingon warrior who punches people casually. That placate's not going to do anything against that guy, dude. You just made him like the way he normally is, backhanding people.
Well,
backhanding people and headbutting people. So...
Then again, if any Klingon warrior gets close enough to me to be a problem, I just whip out the Tholian crystalline sword, which is one of the good things about the lockbox, because that sword just destroys everything.
Yeah.
I just whip it out and destroy them.
The Tholian sword is like cutting out all pretense. It really is. It's a lightsaber.
It is.
You can call it whatever you please. That doesn't change the fact it's a lightsaber.
Actually, remind me after the interview. I've got a couple of galleries on PhotoBucket. I've got my experimental crafting UI. I've got a gallery with all of the different sword effects for the Tholian crystalline sword, and I've got a couple of them that we might want to check out later. And they're lightsabers.
Anyways,
I mean, for the love of God.
Anyways, so moving on. 2, what type of ship will be the 3-year anniversary ship? Cruiser, escort, sign ship, destroyer, or carrier/flight deck cruiser?
It's a cruiser.
It's a cruiser.
It's the ambassador.
It's a cruiser.
It's the ambassador.
The moment you heard that Denise Crosby, this question, into December, beginning of December, before December, the moment you heard Denise Crosby was doing VO at Cryptic for the 3-year anniversary, it's an ambassador.
There's either going to be a Sailor mission or it's going to be the ambassador. Yeah. And now we've got an ambassador screenshot in the Friday screenshots. We've got an old Klingon ship. We've got the 3-year anniversary.
It's an ambassador. So
the ambassador.
Moving on from that, since you've already told us that the next one is the Dominion lockbox, what's the ship? Since it's not likely to be a bug, it's it's the
heavy escort carrier.
The annoying.
I'm just going to disregard that because we already know that now, but at the time we had no idea.
So you could tell us what some of the other rewards might be. They already posted all those on the forums. We go over those in the round table. So moving on from that, well, season 8.
And I actually got one of those recently, the VIP dilithium pack, and I ended up getting 6,000 dilithium while I was on that rock, because I went ahead and did the regular mining daily.
Yeah. Will Season 8 deliver early game Clink content or the beginning level decrease? No. It will deliver
it will.
It will deliver it in the form of faction agnostic content.
Maybe.
It will deliver, if they're doing a bunch of missions, which they won't do a bunch of missions, but if they're going to be doing a bunch of missions, it will be faction agnostic, and they will basically, because there are still gaps. They cut off half the Klingon game, and there's still gaps in the mission progression. So will they make you level earlier yet? No. They're going to use the new missions, and they're going to reshuffle the Klingon missions for the 500th time to try and close the gaps that exist now.
And maybe make them worse. But Klingons need the content, because I like playing Klingons. Once you get to the late game, they're great. I mean, if you fly a Burrell retrofit, you're not going to want to fly anything else. Because firing torpedoes while you're cloaked is the ultimate NPC troll. Because they cannot see you, and you can just torpedo spam out the ass. Klingons are fun to play once you hit Lieutenant General. Before that, it's hell.
Until that torpedo ends up on the Federation side.
You mean the bioneural warhead? Because they just got that.
Yeah,
and that was
one
of my favorite torpedoes.
I'm talking about the cloak torpedo.
They're not going to get that.
That's the same. Remember, the Cryptic said the same thing about the bioneural warhead. There is no way, none.
Except that the bioneural warhead is technically Fed technology because the Federation invented bioneural gel packs.
No, it's not. It's not technically Federation technology. The bioneural warhead was technically Cardassian.
Yeah, but it's still bioneural gel packs, and that's still Fed technology.
Yeah, but they may not have been the only person to have invented those.
They might have shared it.
They wouldn't have shared it with the Cardassians. But the thing is, that's gonna, gonna end up on the Federation side at some point, because everything else that the KDF has had that's been unique has ended up on the Federation side. So, and
Which is kind
I'm
of
not
sad.
saying that it should. This is not me saying like this should be on the Federation side. You know, screw those Klingons. This is not me saying that. This is me saying that's probably going to happen. And like the Klingons should get more content. The Klingons should get a decent storyline that doesn't paint them as like the most terrible people in the freaking galaxy. You know, where they don't like commit war crimes. Klingons
Or
should get
crush the Gorn Rebellion, which has been a popular concept.
or crush the Gorn Rebellion. You know,
Yeah.
and like that. And I know why they probably haven't done that, because there'd be no way you could make that faction agnostic. Because the Federation is not going to help the Klingons conquer like the Gorn again. Like, they're not going to help them do that. And that's probably why that featured episode series, if it was ever going to happen, never manifested around season 4. Remember they were saying like there was going to be like a Gorn featured episode series around like the launch of season 4. You know, that's probably why that never like manifested, because they just couldn't, you know, if they were actually working on it, if it was something that was like, if they were in pre-production on it, there'd be no way they could justify the Federation helping the Klingons do that. So there's no way.
It should be a Klingon mission.
It should be Klingon only, but they weren't making Klingon only missions. They were making faction agnostic content. So, you know, there was no way they could justify that, so it didn't happen.
Although there is another idea for Klingon content that's been kind of sitting on my brain for a long time because of how Jimpock has been acting in some of these missions. It really kind of screams Jimpock has been replaced with an Undine.
It just screams me Jimpock is nuts.
No, Jimpock is... They could actually almost legitimately put something in there saying Jimpock has been replaced with an Undine and make that into a Klingon mission, even if it is BS. They could do that.
I wouldn't see that. Like, what I would rather see is Jimpock is just crazy and gets what he deserves.
I want to see Jimpock shot in the head no matter what he is.
Like, I like Jimpock is just crazy, and the Klingons are sick of him, so one day he ends up like on the floor of the High Council chamber with like a Klingon dagger sticking out of his chest.
And the man standing over him should be Worf. He's already been the Chancellor once for like 5 minutes.
Gerard. It won't be Worf. It will probably be Gerard if they go that route.
And that means the Klingons are going to have an alliance with the Romulans, and that means the Federation is fucked.
No. Gerard, like that would be an interesting way to go about it. Like the better choice for a leader for the Empire would be the Duras. That would be pretty funny.
And Worf would probably try to kill him because he's pretty much devoted to keeping the Duras out of power.
Oh no, like he doesn't have like a problem with Duras. He had a problem with Toral, Lursa, Baitor,
and they're all
Duras
dead
himself.
I think.
I don't think Toral is dead.
Yeah, Toral was mentioned all of once in that one in Redemption, and he was never seen
He showed up in Deep Space Nine. He showed up in Deep Space Nine. Yes.
I don't even remember that.
Sort of Kalis. So
I don't remember that episode very well. I've seen it, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, so he's probably still kicking. In fact, I think I remembered somewhere, like somewhere in the path of 2409, Toral was still kicking. So he clearly lived long enough to have a child. So Gerard, Worf probably doesn't have any beef with Gerard, especially considering like the House of Martok is like clandestinely plotting Jimpock's downfall.
Which they should. I mean, Jimpock killed the head of the house.
Yeah. That's like by all rights, like by like the law of Klingon justice, they have the right to kind of like rip his heart out and eat it while he still breathes, because that's how they roll. Again, canon. But moving on from that, will Season 8 deliver early game Klink content and or the beginning level decrease? Probably not. They'll probably use the content, whether or not it is faction agnostic, to fill the holes that are currently in the Klingon level progression, and then somewhere down the line, they might do something to start filling in the holes earlier. But as for the immediate future, probably not.
Before we read the next question out loud, I want to say that not long, I think after this, I ended up posting a concept for this ship on the Stowe forums, and I really, really like it. And once this interview is over, I'll probably give you the link to that so you can put it in the video description or whatever. Because this is a ship that I really want in this game, because it is a canon Klingon ship. One of the few we have seen.
I thought most of the Klingon ships we've seen in canon are in the game.
Well, if you remember... I might as well read the question. Will the Klingon Empire see a cavort battlecruiser in-game despite being visually similar to, but bigger than, the Burrell? Because if you remember in yesterday's Enterprise, cavort battlecruiser. It's not a Burrell. It's not a bird of prey.
That was also an alternate timeline.
We saw them in the normal timeline in Redemption. They were attacking Gowron's ship. And Worf's brother was commanding one. And they had this kind of like shield disrupting torpedo, which ended up in my ship concept, a tachyon inversion torpedo, a shield torpedo that would basically break PvE even more.
Yeah, but that's probably not going to happen.
I really want to see a cavort.
I know, but like as far as like the torpedo is concerned, and you have to keep in mind that the reason why you have tiers with ships that look similar is they want those profile. They want you to be able to look at a profile and sort of immediately know what this is, you know, or in the course of like for example the birds of prey, you see the profile and you click over the guy and you see his rank and you can make an educated guess what that ship is.
Well,
but
in my
they make a bigger bird of prey. They're not going to do that. It's
my suggestion in that it was actually more of a destroyer, but it was leaning kind of toward engineering, so it could have been believable as kind of a raider. I understand your arguments, but
it's a battle cruiser. If it's a battle cruiser, it's supposed to be bigger than just like a regular raider bird of prey. In fact, I remember in yesterday's Enterprise they were fairly large.
Yeah.
So it would they were like about the size at least of a D7. So that's, you know, they're not going to make like an oversized bird of prey just to make the cavort. If they make a cavort, they'll probably make a cavort successor class instead.
Yeah. Which we should still have, and we should still have the torpedo.
It will be reminiscent of them, but it wouldn't be like a giant oversized bird of prey, because you have to remember the reason they were using birds of prey instead of building actual models was budget limitations on a show where they had to, where what they would have to do to film these things, they would basically film them upside down, and they would film them like 12 different times for one scene. You know, they would film them with like the front, like for example, the Enterprise D. They would film the whole thing. They would film the thing with the lights off. Then they'd film like the thing with like only the bottom saucer like window lights on. Then they'd film the thing with only the top saucer window lights on, and so on and so forth. Like each and every little light on the model, they'd have to like go like over multiple passes. So they didn't have the model budget on the show to make a new Klingon ship. Maybe.
Which is kind of ironic, because the Bird of Prey was definitely my favorite looking Klingon ship.
Well, they just couldn't build one, so they ended up using the Bird of Prey, and they ended up playing with the footage to make it look bigger than it actually was, and which may not have been hard considering all of the models used in TNG were wildly out of scale, up to even into Deep Space Nine. They did
until they started using CGI models.
Yeah, until they started using CGI, and even then, wildly out of scale. So, will the Klingon Empire ever see a cavort battle cruiser?
Probably not.
Probably not. But you know, if they ever do something cavort they could do something reminiscent of the cavort sometime in the future. But if they're making Klingon content, like if they're making missions that are like whether or not they are faction agnostic are going to be in the Klingon level progression, then they are more concerned with that, and they should be. With giving the Klingons something to do with all the stuff that they have, and maybe like adding more uniforms to the game, more customization for the Klingons because they desperately need it.
Or making it so that when you hit show armor on the Klingon side, it's got a different graphic and you can actually show the armor. Because if you go over to the Klingon side and hit show armor, nothing happens.
That might be a good thing because nobody likes the plastic pajamas.
It's alright for the first 5 minutes. I remember in the first winter event, I ended up turning my liberated Borg into like a Starfleet Borg drone using that.
I tried that. It got boring after like 5 seconds.
Right.
So like the plastic pajamas guys, like the KDFers who are listening to this, the plastic pajamas, you're not missing out on anything.
Well, if they've played KDF, that means they played Federation. If they played Federation, they know what the plastic pajamas look like.
Yeah. But like if they wanted to go like another route for the Klingons, like make the armor like the kits for the Klingons should not look like Starfleet kits at all. Like the armor for the Klingons should not look like Starfleet armor. And I kind of think that they kind of went the wrong way with the Klingons wearing the armor they do, because it just kind of looks static after like all the change you saw in like Klingon uniforms from like the original series and through the first 6 movies. Their uniforms look different almost every movie, especially in Star Trek 6, where like each of the Klingons has like this personal armor that kind of like shows a little bit of their personality in it. And like there's just like all kinds of different clothes, like all kinds of different like wardrobes and uniforms.
Yeah, even
they were
these
wearing.
days, I color code all of my Klingon armor, and it actually looks kind of good, depending on what class they are, and it still does kind of look kind of old.
Yeah, but not even that. But just like the Klingons, like ever since Star Trek 6, the Klingons have just been kind of like homogenized into looking like, you know, like Kiss cosplayers, instead of actually like trying to like establish more diversity in this. Because like Klingons are not very rigid when it comes like their organization. It's basically I tell you what to do. You know, they don't really care about like stuff like uniform and that, especially when their uniforms have so many wild variations, even in like TNG. Albeit on the same theme of looking like a Kiss cosplayer, but still like within that theme there's a lot of variation.
Yeah.
So, you know, like they clearly don't really give much of a crap how you customize your uniform or how you wear your uniform, as long as you do your job. So, you know, like going back to Star Trek 6, you see
I
all
could
kinds
wear
of different
bright
uniforms.
pink for all they cared.
Probably not. Well,
If you remember in Star Trek 6, Klingon blood was pink. Maybe it's the blood of my enemies.
maybe, but it's been red ever since.
Which is
the blood's been
dumb.
red ever since. Not really. It was kind of like the pink blood was kind of weird, anyways. That like the purple pink blood was kind of goofy. But let's see, Cavort 6. Will there be any way to craft hybrid energy types? Since many players have one or two favorites, no.
Probably not. But I do make a good point in here, which is kind of a little off topic.
Polaron is Polaron. It's Polaron damage. It's just got like the phaser debuff on it.
No, the anti-plasma. If you use the Aegis set, the Aegis set procs against plasma and anti-proton damage resistance, even though the Aegis set isn't supposed to proc on plasma torpedoes, which suggests that they're actually doing 2 different damage types with 1 energy type.
Yeah, probably. But it's probably not going to happen. That's probably going to be like a lockbox exclusive thing.
And then there's the next question, which is threat scaling science consoles, the plasma proc on the non-plasma weapons, and I basically ask, will we see more of those kind of things? They'll probably stick it in the lockbox.
Threat scaling science consoles released with Season 7 add plasma procs to non-plasma weapons. Will we see this with other energy type procs? Might be an embassy thing, or they might like do that with another holding. Probably the embassy. I don't see them putting that in a lockbox. Let's see, 8. Are there any plans you can share with us for Season 9 yet? No.
They haven't said anything.
No.
Although, I
Okay,
remember a long time ago.
This question is kind of doomed, though. Like this question, for one thing, this question would never be answered, and for 2, given Cryptic's track record with long-term estimates, like going back to the engineering reports we were talking about earlier, you know, like going back to their track record with like talking about things in the long term and making estimates about when things will happen and what will happen in the long term or even in the short term. If they actually answer that question, would you be able to believe what they said? And I'm not saying that to be facetious. I'm not saying that to blast Daniel Stahl or anything. I'm just saying that like based on like 2010, 2011, 2012, could you, like, if they actually said something, could you actually hold them to that, considering their track record? Like, could you actually, like, believe that? I couldn't. If I asked them, like, what was going on in Season 9, I wouldn't be able to, because, like, I've kind of tempered my enthusiasm for the game now, though. Might be it's a little bit sad, but I've kind of, like, I've tempered my enthusiasm. I take everything that's said with a grain of salt, because I've been through, like, 2010, 2011, 2012. So, like, I know.
The Year of Hell.
Yeah, the Year of Hell. So I kind of know that, if they're talking about long-term plans to not, like, hedge any bets. The immediate short term.
I do remember. It was a long time ago, but I remember one of the devs mentioning that they had planned at one time to have another adventure zone in the Nimbus system, because there are 3 systems in Taudewa that have no use right now, and one of them is called the Nimbus system.
Oh, the Nimbus system has a use. It's how you get into the vault.
The
Nimbus system has a use. It's how you get into the vault.
No, that's the Hakona system.
No, that's the Nimbus system. The Nimbus, you go to Nimbus and you hit F and it queues you for the vault ensnared.
What?
It did when it was on Tribble. It did when it came to live, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know why it would do that, considering the vault is 20 light years away almost.
I was pretty weirded out by that as well. The thing is,
maybe they just wanted to put a placeholder there.
If you're going to have Paradise City, for God's sake, put the bar there, because that's the one thing anybody cares about, is the bar. Paradise City has to have the bar, and for God's sakes, don't put Davidians in there, because the Davidians made the bar in Drozana incredibly annoying and headache-inducing with, like, the constant flashing blue.
Yeah, and kind of stroke-inducing.
And
if you have epilepsy, don't go to Drozana Station.
And here's me dreaming the impossible dream if, like, a bunch of people start bugging role players there. First of all, role players, if they put the bar, people who role play, if they put the bar in Paradise City, in the Nimbus system, if you can go to that bar, I will meet you there. And, like, Cryptic, this is me dreaming the impossible dream, but if there's anybody messing with role players, like spraying fire extinguishers at people just trying to have a good time, put bouncers there to throw them out. That would be awesome.
Right.
And also cat ladies, but that's probably not going to make it in. I want the cat lady, I want, like, the table in the back with, like, the belching Klingons, and I want, like, the crazy Beekman-looking guy doing, like, weather forecasts. I want that. I want, like, the pool table. I want a pool minigame. I want the bar from Paradise City, all right?
Why not?
Okay, I'm done.
But that's the only thing we really heard about anything past season, like, 8.
They're not gonna they've told us about season 9. They basically said they plan to, like, further the Undine storyline that's been hanging forever. Is what was said in the Ask Cryptic.
And I remember your vlog about that and how they should do that.
How they need to resolve it. Yeah, they need to resolve the Undine storyline. And the idea they have for the Undine storyline is cool. So we'll see if they do that in how they go about it. But like long-term plans, they're not going to tell you. And even if they do tell you, everything they say is subject to change anyways. So
which is probably the same answer to the next question, which is, the next question was more a subtle point at the forums, because I read this on the forums too.
Has anyone in the office tossed around the idea of a Delta Quadrant lockbox? Probably.
I mean, they could put a Krenim ship in there. They could put a Talaxian ship in there.
Ew.
When they put in the Delta Quadrant, we're going to have a Delta Quadrant lockbox, and it's going to have something to do with one of them.
Yeah, but it's going to be after they put in the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah.
That's
I'd love to see a Delta Quadrant lockbox.
Long ways off, so.
Especially if it has proper chronoton torpedoes that ignore shields, but that's never going to happen because that would be totally game-breaking.
And the Federation would figure out how to protect themselves from it pretty fast.
Yeah.
So that advantage would immediately be rendered useless, probably in the same storyline. So.
Speaking of the forums, I ended up, when I posted these questions to Dan Stahl, there was a link in my signature to the concept I'm talking about that I ended up bringing back up. And the basics behind this idea coming back up is we've got quantum slipstream, and it goes for so long that you literally hit the edge of the system with 45 seconds left to go sometimes.
No, you don't.
And quantum slipstream, for me at least, is totally useless. So that's kind of the basis behind the next question.
They're not going to upgrade quantum slipstream.
No, it's not an upgrade to quantum slipstream. The next question has to deal with the one sector block to rule them all. Is that still being considered? Because when you use quantum slipstream, you're going to hit the wall well before it's time.
You're not. You're only talking about like crossing it like the short way. Some like when you're trying to cross it lengthwise, quantum slipstream isn't anywhere near long enough, and it's probably.
I
not
did
to be
tour
made.
the universe earlier, and I was going from one sector, from the end of one end of Alpha Triangulate to the other with like just barely ending it before I hit the sector block border.
Well, you probably maxed out driver coils.
Of course.
And like not everybody has, because those are points that are easily put into something else just as important, if not more so. And they're not going to be updating quantum slipstream because that's what the Vesta is for, and people who bought the Vesta would be kind of pissed off if suddenly everybody had really awesome slipstream. But reading this question, old idea, but will we eventually see a map merge, one sector block to rule them all? Especially since there are new quantum slipstreams that make sector blocks too limiting. No, dude, they're not too limiting. Using only 10 or 15 seconds of a buff that lasts a minute and has a 2-minute cooldown. The sector blocks are not too limiting. They're kind of super huge.
They are for me.
Well, they're not for everyone. They're still huge, but the problem with this is that would require a lot of like crazy work in like basically redesigning everything, because especially if you have like the Star Trek star charts, which I do, the geography of Star Trek Online makes zero sense. It's really like
that much I have heard, and I do know.
It makes no sense whatsoever, especially the point where they had 2 Azure nebulas. Like they had the Azure Nebula in like Omega Leonis. One more thing the KDF has lost. And like they were making this big show of introducing the Azure Nebula in Tau Dewa, and then they saw they had 2 of them and they went, oh crap, and they renamed the other one really quick from like Omega Leonis. So like the topography has never made sense. There are entire sector blocks that like the Beta Z sector, you know, that
was
have not been
actually part
introduced.
of the suggestion that I ended up posting on the forums, because in order to even make the map merge, there are gaps in the sector map that would have to be resolved.
Yeah, they would have to be resolved, but you could do that by putting placeholders until you're ready to put something there, which is what half the systems in Tau Dewa are. But
Well, they're patrol sectors.
well, not just that, but there's lots of systems in there that have no use right now.
3.
At all, yeah. So they would have to basically reorganize everything, and that's going to be a massive undertaking. And there are two situations where I think they would consider doing that. One is they talked about development of a new graphics engine at the Las Vegas event, at like the developer panel, and like during the development of a new engine for the game, which the game desperately needs, they could probably consider it, making one sector block to rule them all, especially once they have the staff from Neverwinter to work with them, like the dev staff from Neverwinter, you know, not the staff that's going to be running the game, the staff who are currently like building it. Once they have the staff to actually commit to R&D, and put together an actual galaxy map where like you can freely fly from like Earth to Kronos to Bajor, without having to like zone constantly. That comes with its own set of caveats, though, because the server is going to have to be very robust, and Cryptic's hardware is
They'd
not
have
exactly...
to redesign the entire game.
Yeah, they'd have to... Not the entire game, but they'd have to redesign how you get around. How do you get around? They'd have to reassign where everything is. They'd have to reassign interacts. They'd have to reassign patrol routes. They'd have to basically redesign anything that has to do with sector space. And that's not the entire game, but it is a massive chunk of it.
Yeah.
So I see them like doing that with the help of the dev staff from Neverwinter once Neverwinter
And making
launches.
it its own season.
And making it its own season, probably. That's probably going to be a very dry season if and when they do that.
They've already done it at least once back when they made the sector blocks what they are now. Back in like season 2.
It's not the same thing. That was just a visual change.
But they kind of made a season out of that.
No, it's kind of not even close. It was basically just a visual change to change the way things look because so many people were like, God, this sector space is ugly. You know, it was just like changing it to look more palatable to people.
True enough. It's been a long time since they did that, so I kind of don't remember
it's
it as
nowhere
well as it should.
even in the same ballpark as what they would have to do to make one large sector block, and they'd have to have the hardware to support it, and cryptic servers crash if you sneeze on them. So they would have to upgrade all of their hardware first to make sure it could run it, and we know how reluctant they are to do that. They'd have to, like, you'd have to take, like, I for one think that, like, people complained about how few people were in zones, like the population for each instance. People complained that it was too low. Then they skyrocketed it, and that's probably what causes a lot of the problems the game has in terms of like how bloated and unwieldy a lot of its social zones have become, especially Molrihan, which shouldn't have that many people in it.
You think this game is bad? You should see Republic and Imperial Fleet on Tor. The cap for the fleets in that game is the same as it is on a planet-sized map, and it's basically the size and shape, mind you, of Earth's space dock.
I've been told
and they're
about
trying
that.
to cramp 300 people into it. It can't handle 150 as it is.
I've been told about that, but I'm talking about Stowe and like the space travel. And like you travel through Beta Ursay and like you like pan over to where Deep Space Nine is, and your frame rate drops because there's so much crap there. And you know, like the population is way too high, and like I don't know who was complaining about it being like too low, but it's way too high now, and it makes it really goofy trying to get through Beta Ursay, for example, and with like everybody just crowded. It makes it really goofy traveling. It made it really goofy traveling through Ada Eridani, where you didn't even want to look at New Kara or look in the direction of the Donadu system because everybody was hovering over these things. It makes it goofy going through Taudewa because everybody's hovering over
Malrihan.
Yeah, they're hovering over Malrihan. So like, the population's too high. Like having like a massive chunk of sector, like a massive like one sector map to rule them all could probably alleviate that. I don't think you should be constantly like brushing up against people in like sector space.
That actually reminds me, considering that the representations of ships in sector space effectively make some ships about a light year long, we shouldn't even have crash capsules in sector space, because that would be like crashing into a half light year long asteroid.
Change. That's an artistic change. It's an abstraction.
Yeah,
they're not going to make it like some people were complaining that sector space travel was too fast when the game first came out. You guys are nuts. I'm sorry. Like there's no way, none, that like there's going to be like an accurate measure of distance in sector space, even if they make one sector map to rule them all. It's impractical, and to be very honest, it would be extraordinarily boring anyways. So like sector space is always going to be abstracted. Always.
Still, it'd be nice to fly in a straight line instead of 1, 2, 3 map changes.
This is true. It'd be nice if you just hit the button, I want to go here, and you just like spawned there, but...
Isn't that what Transwarp does?
Yeah, but Transwarp does that, but you can't like use it for like everything, and if you try using it, your diplomacy Transwarp or your fleet Transwarp, they're all put on cooldown anyways. I don't think that should
I actually
be like
use the diplomacy Transwarp a lot because my Fed science officer was an ambassador well before the duty officer system came out.
Same here.
You actually get separate accolades for that.
Yeah.
I didn't even find out until I was exploring around the Stowe Gateway earlier, and I looked at all the accolades. I'm like, what's Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Everybody was made an emeritus ambassador. Let's see. One other old project to poke at. What's the status of the exploration revamp? They answered this in the Ask Cryptic. He wants to use basically the Foundry, and I actually we actually discussed this before. We were talking about the Ask Cryptic. We took 5, and we had this conversation about like ways to beef up exploration. And one of my ideas, basically, probably the simplest to do, would be to basically have a text file, like a client-side text file, that was that worked sort of like the way your macros text file could work, where you would have a text file where you could copy and paste like a Foundry mission ID per line, and what the game would do would be you would go into the star clusters, and when you hit enter unknown system, it would check to see if you had like a Foundry mission IDs. Like, it would check to see if there was a Foundry mission ID for like the first 10 lines or so, if by default, and like maybe the first 20 lines if you like could bought like 10 extra lines from the C store to like, and it would like tell the server side that you had bought that, so it would search for 20 lines instead of 10 and randomly select one of the IDs that you would paste
and make you
in
play
there,
a Foundry mission,
and like start a Foundry mission the moment you got on, the moment you hit that button. And that would be a way you could do it. It wouldn't be perfect because the Foundry itself is not very... It's robust, but it's not there. You know, it's not there.
Yeah, we don't
all.
even have turret assets.
That's really like the least of the Foundry's problems right now.
Yeah.
Like there's really simple stuff that you cannot do in the Foundry, or at least you can't do it without cheating in the Foundry. And this really
like
simple
the
stuff.
battleship mission that I told you about earlier. There's no way to distinguish between Cardassian and Jem'Hadar. You can just put true way in. You can't even specify which ship you want to put in between those two.
Not even that. Like, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about basic mission construction. Like, basic objectives. Like, basic storytelling. There is just this, like, litany of things that the Foundry desperately needs if you want it to be the be-all, end-all exploration, savior of the exploration system that Daniel Stahl apparently wants it to be, but the Foundry is so not there yet. Like, you could, like, that playlist idea would take you, like, would get you for a while, because there's some really great authors out there that I think would make out some really could put out some really amazing exploration missions. Like, off the top of my head, Kirk Fat, Alimac, Captain Revo could do some really awesome stuff if you just, like, if they, like, sat down and just, like, made, like, a straight up pure Foundry exploration mission and just tagged it exploration.
But it isn't there yet.
Nowhere near. And
I've got at least 3 concepts for Foundry missions that's waiting on something, whether it be an art asset or the ability to do something.
Like, there were actually art assets taken out of the Foundry. Like,
when?
You used to have, like, be able to use, like, a ton of uniforms in the Foundry. You can't do that anymore.
That's stupid.
Yeah, they're no longer available in the Foundry. Like, the Jupiter uniforms used to be available in the Foundry. You can't use them anymore. The All Good Things uniform used to be available in the Foundry. I'm pretty sure you can't use that one anymore. There was a lot of stuff taken out of it, and for reasons that I don't think have ever been explained. But yeah, like if you want, like, what the Foundry needs to be, basically, if you want to use it as the exploration revamp that people have been clamoring for since beta. If you want it to be that revamp, what you really desperately have to do is what it has to be is it has to be the Aurora toolset it's intended to be the spiritual successor of. it has to be that same combination of incredibly simple and deeply complex that the Aurora toolset got away with being. And it has to have just this same freedom in creating and placing objects. Like of course there are things like you're not going to be able to like create your own weapons and or armor pieces and stuff like that in the Foundry, fine. But you're not going to make like designer equipment or anything, but the ability to equip an enemy with the stuff you want them to have, the ability
DOFs in space for the NPCs.
no, not really DOFs in space, mind you, but like I'm even like talking basic stuff that kind of should be in there already. Like giving enemies the weapons and equipment you want them to have, giving characters the equipment you want them to have, stuff
Or
like
even
switches,
buff powers.
stuff like switches, like you can't do stuff like switches. Like what a switch is, what I'm talking about. And if anybody listening to this has ever used RPG Maker, you know all about switches. What a switch is it's basically you have this variable, something else starting RPG Maker, but I'm just using this as a placeholder term. You have this thing where basically it's kind of like an if statement. They're kind of like compartmentalized if statements where like if this switch is on, this happens. Like if this switch is on, this thing appears here. Like simple things like that. Like the ability to like add something, like add like lines that can turn switches on and off, that can really make a story branch out and actually give you like a true branching storyline in mission, which is kind of like the holy grail for Foundry design.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it's like being able to like create a true branching story in the Foundry, so the player can like craft their story as they go through instead of basically just running through from wall of text to wall of text to wall of text on like a railroad. Like until it has that kind of functionality, until it has the ability to build your own maps from scratch, because you're stuck with prefabs right now, which is something that is in the Foundry already for Neverwinter. But it hasn't come. That code branch hasn't come to Stowe yet.
Yeah.
But
I'm really waiting for that too.
Until you have the ability to build a space interior map without selecting a prefab ground map and setting like the floor millions of miles in the sky, like you have an actual space map where you can like put placeables, like placeable corridor segments or what have you in it to and select like the actual backgrounds you can use in space.
Yeah, it's not ready for exploration.
It's not ready.
Exploration right now does need a serious fix because of how it makes those randomly generated missions. I've got an example here that was just so ridiculous that I had to take a screen cap of the dialogue. Captain, the Borg have been in this area. They're searching for artifacts from their third dynasty. It took the world gen stuck the Borg in, and it made no sense. And that kind of breaks the exploration flow.
Even better is when the Borg show up and claim they have like a ancestral claim to the planet you're standing on.
What ancestral claim? You're the Borg!
You have no you don't have Borg ancestors. You're assimilated. You're either
you don't have a third dynasty.
You're either assimilated or you're test tube babies.
What the heck is wrong with this gen system? Even if the Foundry doesn't do the exploration revamp right away, it needs to be fixed, especially with the totally empty maps.
Yeah.
Like, you'll spawn in a map where it'll tell you to go to, like, an asteroid base. The asteroid base will be on the other side of the map. There'll be a little cluster of asteroids next to it, and the rest of it's empty space with no guide markers.
Which makes no sense, by the way.
Fortunately, you're usually pointing in the almost precise direction of the base when you spawn in. That's the only saving grace.
The huge clusters of asteroids make zero sense in terms of astronomy, but like even moving on from that, like the ability to create your own ground map, to create your own features, to change the features on a ground map, instead of being stuck with prefabs. which is again something the Aurora toolset could do. You know, there's so many things that the Foundry needs before
Right now, I'm waiting on the ability to
exploration.
put additions on the ground maps, because I want to make a Foundry series based on the backstories from one of my characters, and he's supposed to be found in a cave on a desert planet, and I cannot make a cave. There's no way to make a cave, really.
Yeah.
So until we can edit ground maps, I've got one stuck there. I've got another stuck on an art asset. So yeah, the Foundry really needs some help.
Like it needs all this stuff. It needs blocking. Another big example, something else you could do with the Aurora toolset if you like learn Neverwinter script, which wasn't all that hard to learn. Like the Aurora toolset had its own sort of scripting language called Neverwinter script, or NW script, I think is how it was written. That lets you like do really complex stuff, like really well done missions would basically have like sort of in-engine cutscenes, a la the sort of stuff you would see in Half-Life, where you're free to move around and do as you please. But they would have like the NPC characters blocked. Like they would have their positions blocked out, so you'd have them like walking around, talking, like hitting their marks and delivering their lines, stuff like that. That kind of stuff should be in the Foundry too.
Yeah.
If you want people to be like telling stories specifically for exploration, the Foundry has so far to go, or telling stories at all. The Foundry has so far to go because I came up on JRPGs, so I am used to walls of text. Walls and walls of text, but a lot of people are not. And sometimes, like, telling a story in a wall of text is really limiting in what you can get away with. Because you can only do so much in flavor text before the player is just sort of like, okay, skipping through the wall of text to get to the actual playable stuff. Because every time they have to read that big chunk of text, you're taking them out of the game to do it. So, like, what you need to be able to like block scenes so that you can have the player be a participant in a scene, and like a dialogue pop-up can like come up when it comes time for one of the NPCs to address the player, or the player to address an NPC. But other than that, you can actually watch this story unfold and feel like you are a part of it without having to stop what you're doing and read through flavor text, as awesome as some of the flavor text in these Foundry missions is.
And that would especially make good sense in this game, because this is Star Trek. Some of the things they could do with that kind of stuff would be amazing. What was that one mission? I remember a mission a long time ago. It was one of the first missions featured in the Foundry, and it had some of the best tech. And if they'd been able to put cutscenes in for maybe even one part,
are you thinking of Rise of Darkness?
No, it was It had to do with, like, going into the past, and there were Cardassians, and it's been forever since I played it.
I'm trying to think of what that was, but I can't put a name on it.
But another one, some of Captain Revo's missions. There are a couple places where he could put cutscenes in, and it would
I'm not even talking about cutscenes. I'm not even talking about like cutscenes. I'm talking about if you've ever played like Half-Life, or
which I haven't had the fortune of doing,
or like Half-Life, Halo, like games where you retain full control, and it's basically like an in-engine cutscene is taking place before you, but it's not a cutscene. The characters before you are simply like hitting their marks, delivering their lines, doing their thing, and you're free to like move around and like interact with the environment and such while they're doing this. It's not really a cutscene; it's just like an in-engine scripted scene that is happening before you. Like that sort of stuff is something the Foundry could really, really use. And I can see like people again like Captain Revo, Alamac, Havraha, doing Kirk Fat, doing really great stuff with that. So, the Foundry, it's not there yet. If you want it to be,
it needs to be, but it isn't.
It isn't, sad. And it's not going to be for a while. The Foundry's still in beta.
Realistically, yeah. Officially, yeah. I mean, if you go into the Foundry even on holodeck and look at the top ribbon, Foundry Beta 0. I think 4 or something.
Mm-hmm. It's still in beta. It's gonna be in beta for a long time. I know
It's
that it
going to be
never
in
went
beta
up.
longer than Minecraft was in beta.
I don't know that. How long was Minecraft in beta?
Probably 3 years? Because I
No,
remember playing
it
the
hasn't
classic version of Minecraft.
It hasn't been. It's been like at most 2.
Mm.
At most, and not even that because the Foundry only arrived at like late December.
Season 4.
Yeah. No, not even season 4.
They-
Before that. Like
Yeah.
late December, like it arrived with season 3. And I don't even think it arrived live when season 3 launched. I think it arrived like after season 3 launched. So not even 2 years probably.
Season 3, Season 4, between then,
No,
yeah.
it was like it was down for months after season 4. It didn't arrive at
Yeah.
season 4. It arrived like after season 3 before the remastered episodes. Is when it finally showed up. Because I remember I was watching Stoked at the time, and
The 1-year anniversary, February 2nd, 2011, saw the live release of 3 Federation 1 Klingon episode. Basically, it was released on holodeck on March 28th, 2011.
yeah, so not even 2 years.
Yeah.
So
I happen to have a StoWiki article up, and I just... Beep. Yeah, it hasn't been that long, but it's gonna be a while.
So those are your questions.
Well, they were. Half of them were invalid by the time we got around to talking to them, and the
Yeah.
other half were kind of stupid looking back.
So no such thing as a dumb question. So
Only a dumb answer. And is it that what D-Stall is famous for?
I tend to not blast Daniel Stahl very much. Like I tend to like I call him out when he's saying something that I know for a fact is BS, like the whole cloaking thing where like
Yeah. The first time they said it was a bug, and the second time they said working as intended, and I say that's total bullshit.
No,
Why do we need to drop the cloak to talk to someone
they
next
said
to
it
me?
was a bug for a very long time, and around middle of last year or something, he said that it was working as intended.
Which
So,
is dumb.
A little bit of revisionist history there, and when he does something like that, I'll call him on it. But I don't I don't distrust him, or I will not. I'm not gonna like stand up here and like say he's full of shit as a rule in terms of how I approach him, because I know this guy. Like, when you look at this guy, he is living the fucking dream. Okay? We can all bitch at him as much as we want, and in quite a few cases we're justified in doing so, but at the end of the day, this guy is doing something we would all love to do, and I have
Right.
to respect the man for that.
I have to admit, one of the biggest reasons I'm going for a computer programming degree is one day I do want to work on this game. I like this game. I love this game. Despite all of its flaws and despite what some of the devs might be doing, this is a good game. It is worth playing. And I remember someone else say, I think it might have been you, but it might have been one of the other Star Trek Online Let's Play type things that I watch. They basically said, this is really the only Star Trek we've got.
Until Excalibur comes out.
Or Titan.
Titan?
Star Trek Titan. I've heard all over the place people suggesting that they make a TV series out of the book series.
Oh, dude, there have been so many pitches for a TV series, and basically what CBS said is that like JJ would have final say. So I wouldn't be holding out hope for a new Star Trek TV series for a long time. Like after JJ, because JJ Abrams, we were talking about this before we started recording. JJ Abrams is going to be doing the new Star Wars movie, or at least it's somewhat
For
likely.
the evil empire.
For Disney, yes. But I think his like style of directing and filmmaking would lend itself really well to a Star Wars movie. And though I dread to see what's going to come of the expanded universe with the movie he's going to make, I dread
Considering it's not the Thrawn trilogy.
look as long as like I if like everything to do with the Yuzhan Vong is written out of continuity, I'm not too sad about that. You know, like just like everything from like, you know, like everything with like the arrival of the Yuzhan Vong onward gets written out of continuity. I'm not sad about that loss. I don't know very many people who would be, because like a New Jedi Order, Legacy of the Force. Oh God.
I read some of Legacy of the Force, and it was alright.
No. No. It's bad. All the shit with like Dark Sadist and like,
Some of the stuff they pulled was kind of bullshit, but
there was a lot of bullshit going on.
at least it's not as bad as Nero defeating V'ger with his mind.
I don't know about some of it, dude. Some of the stuff that goes on in like New Jedi Order and freaking Legacy of the Force. Some of the stuff that happens in there is pretty close to Nero defeating V'ger with his mind. It's that bad. It's not good.
Although if you do want a legitimate, decently well-written Star Wars book series to read, there is the Darth Bane trilogy, and I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, the Darth Bane trilogy's alright, yeah.
It's alright.
You could read Splinter of Mind's Eye.
Mm.
The one they wrote the one they wrote when they didn't know Luke and Leia were related.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Please
yes.
tell me they didn't.
The one where they're teasing, the one that's basically like a shipping novel. Oh, that's really uncomfortable to read now.
But the one biggest thing that I'm probably going to say more as a joke, but is still probably serious. If J.J. Abrams makes the next Star Wars movie, all of the weapons are going to fire lens flare.
They might. The man is very fond of his lens flares. Perhaps a little overly fond of lens flares. The man... I could
barely watch half of the J.J. Trek movie because of all of the lens flares.
I remember like a live journal post where somebody was like, I got bored so I counted the fucking lens flares. And there's like
it's kind
thousands.
His fondness of lens flare ends up kind of like creating the same effect that you had when you played Rapier and you warped into the Bajoran wormhole and your entire room was dark and you were blinded by the brightness of the screen.
That wasn't Rapier. That was like Temple of the Paw Wraiths. That starts with like the blinding white screen.
Yes. It's kind of like that for me.
It's not that bad for me. I know what he's trying to do with the lens flares. I know what he's trying to do, and his intentions are good, but he needs to tone them down. What he's trying to do is he's trying to like make imperfections in the film. He's trying to simulate those.
He could do that in post-production. Heck, I could do that.
Most of them are added in post-production, dude. They are. Like most of them are added in post-production. But he's really trying to like simulate like video artifacts to make this look more like a film and not less like you're standing there. And that's a bit of like it's kind of the same thing as like when you're playing Mass Effect or Mass Effect 2, I think still had it. They dropped it for Mass Effect 3. One of the reasons that game blows, when they dropped like the grain filter, you would play the game with that, and it would give it like the same sort of like grainy look as like a 70s or 80s science fiction movie. It's kind of like the same thing he's trying to do. Mass Effect also has.
And I understand what he is trying to do, but his affection for lens flare is so bad that if you've ever seen the video how it should have ended for Star Trek, for his Star Trek movie on YouTube, one of the things they do to try to escape the black hole is turn off the lens flare generators. it's that bad. It's just, it's so bad it's funny. He does need to tone that down.
He's a little overly fond of the lens flares, yeah. But I understand what he's trying to do, and when he's doing it in like space, because when he's doing it in like the space view, because like for example, like when at that final pass when the Enterprise is flying over and Spock is giving like the opening narration at the end of the movie. Like what he's trying to do there is he's using lens flares to try and make the CG model look more like practical effects, and that was a great shot.
It was an alright shot, yeah. Although I disagreed with how they redesigned how the Enterprise looked. Now it just looks like the Enterprise gained 30 pounds in the last few years.
Well, if you go by what was it, X Astra Scientia, the JJ Enterprise is about like 200 times bigger.
No, I'm not talking about the size
bigger.
of it. I'm talking about the bloatedness of the beginning of the nacelles. How much fatter it looks. It looks like it walked into a cake factory and there were no survivors.
You got something against overweight people? Huh?
I am overweight,
Huh?
but that ship is just embarrassing. I mean, I'm fat, and I'm calling that ship fat.
I have seen so many variations of the original series Enterprise and as mods in other games that it doesn't really faze me all that much. I've seen so many variations.
Jay.
I've seen like Gabe. I really like the Gabe Corner version. There was a time when people thought that was the version the movie was going to use. A lot of people were disappointed that it wasn't the version the movie was going to use. But I remember like the Gabe Corner version of the Enterprise. That one looked badass. There have been a lot of different variations, and like I think that it's a little bit. I don't think that the outcry over the appearance of the ship was as warranted, or like not like to the amount, like I will fully admit that Star Trek fans are about like are one of like the bitchiest fan bases in the history of the world, and I include myself in that statement. And if you don't believe me in that, go watch Rise of the Red Shirt. I fully include myself in that statement when I say that.
If they don't watch Rise of the Red Shirt, they probably don't watch anything you watch, and they're probably not watching this.
I know, but if they happen upon this and they haven't seen it, and they're like, "Fuck you!" No, I fully include myself in that statement. You know, I am an opinionated dude, and like a lot of Star Trek fans are really opinionated, and a lot of what we can say either is or can come off as whinging about stuff. So, like, but I don't really
especially
think...
how sometimes I tend to argue about what Star Trek could win against.
Oh, that's not even. That's one of the nerdiest arguments in all of nerddom, dude. Let's not
Star
start
Trek
that
versus Star Wars.
Makes no
the Borg versus the Daleks.
That's just because of the Spoonie one.
Yeah.
That's just because of the Spoonie one stuff. But anyways, those are the 11 questions. We've gotten like far off topic now. We're starting to talk about Star Wars, so I think
it's that bad.
It's time.
And we've been going for almost 90 minutes now.
So I think I'm going to call it there before this gets even further out of hand. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me. Sorry we couldn't get you
having me
in on the round table.
It's all right. I had a class. It's something that couldn't have been done.
Yeah. So those are his questions, and those are half the answers to his questions.
Yeah.
And so I will...
And kind of the theory behind those questions and why they were asked.
Yeah. So I will see you guys later. So later.
Q Rise of the Red Shirt.